It started with a knock. Not loud, not frantic, just wrong. The kind of knock that doesn't wait for permission. It waits for a mistake. And that night, someone made the mistake. This story begins with two siblings. For the sake of privacy, we'll give them fake names. Let's call the older brother Ahmad. He was 18 at the time. His younger sister, we'll call her Reem, and she was just 10. Now, what you're about to hear is something Ahmad swears he'll never forget. It's a night that completely shattered their lives, especially Reem's, because by the time the sun rose, his little sister had lost her mind. So here's what happened. It was a normal evening. Their parents had decided to visit Ahmad and Reem's grandfather, who lived in a nearby village and had recently fallen seriously ill. They told Ahmad, "You're old enough now. Just look after your sister tonight. The maid will be there and we'll be back around dawn." Ahmad agreed. He was used to responsibility, and besides, it was only a few hours. What could possibly go wrong? At first, things were totally fine. Reem stayed close to her brother as he studied. He had an important physics exam the next day, and he was deep in his notes, focused. Hours passed. Eventually, he felt his brain start to fry, so he put his pen down, leaned forward on his desk, and closed his eyes for just a second. And that's when it started. He heard a knock at the door. Now, he knew immediately who it was. The knock was light and totally random, like someone unsure of how hard to knock. It was Reem. He could always tell by the way she did it. He opened the door, and there she was, standing there, shaking. "Reem, what's wrong? Are you okay?" She looked terrified. Her lips trembled as she spoke. "I had a nightmare." She told him she dreamed she was trapped in some pitch-black place. She was running, full speed through the darkness. But someone was chasing her. She couldn't see who, couldn't even describe what it was. But she felt it, breathing down her neck. And then, just before she woke up, the voice, this horrible voice, whispered something to her. "Don't you dare speak again." Ahmad pulled her into a hug. "Hey, it's okay. It was just a dream. How about we go watch some TV downstairs? That sound good?" She nodded, still clearly shaken. So they started heading down the stairs together, and Ahmad was hoping this would calm her down. But as they were walking halfway down the steps, they both suddenly stopped cold. The doorbell started ringing, but it wasn't just a ding-dong and done. No, it was non-stop, like someone had glued their finger to the buzzer and wasn't letting go. They froze. Both of them had the same thought. "Mom and Dad are back." Reem didn't hesitate. She ran for the front door, desperate for the comfort of their parents. But just as she reached for the handle, Ahmad's gut twisted. Something wasn't right. He looked at the clock. 2:30 a.m. No way. Their parents said they wouldn't be back until dawn. He tried to call out to stop her, to tell her to wait, but it was too late. She'd already opened the door. And that is when the real nightmare began. Ahmad says as soon as the front door creaked open, he stepped closer to his sister to see who exactly was on the other side. And the moment his eyes landed on them, his stomach dropped. Standing in the doorway was a man. And not just any man. He was huge, broad-shouldered, thick arms, and a wild, scruffy beard that looked like it hadn't been trimmed in years. But the most disturbing thing? His eyes. They were wide, unblinking, almost too wide. There was something about them that made Ahmad's skin crawl. Right next to him was a woman. She was wearing all black, head to toe. Whatever she was wearing completely concealed her face. Not a single feature was visible. Then the man spoke. "Peace be upon you. Is this Haj Ayman's house?" Ahmad blinked. That was his father's name. "Yeah," he replied, "but my dad's not home." The man's eyes grew even wider. He started scanning the inside of the house, like he was looking for something, or someone. Then came the next question. "What about your mother? Is she home? And here's where Imad admits he messed up. Without thinking, he blurted out, "No, she's not here either." The moment those words left his mouth, he noticed the woman in black lean in toward the man. She didn't say anything out loud, but Imad could see her whispering something to him, almost like she was giving him instructions. Then the man turned back and asked, "So, you two are here alone, son?" Imad's heart skipped. His mind scrambled. He realized he was answering all the wrong things, so he tried to recover, asking cautiously, "Wait, who exactly are you?" The man responded calmly, "I'm an old neighbor of your father's. We had plans to meet tonight. Just thought we'd stop by like we said." But something didn't sit right. Imad thought, if my dad really had a meeting with this guy, why would he decide to leave for the village tonight? Why wouldn't he have told me someone was coming? But before he could think any further, his eyes caught something. The man was holding something in his left hand, a black rope, or maybe a strap hanging down from what looked like a tied-up black bag. He couldn't tell exactly what it was, but something about it made his instincts scream. Then the man spoke again. "We've been on the road a long time. Mind if we just come in and rest a little? We won't stay long. We'll wait for your parents." And once again, Imad slipped. He nodded and said, "Sure, come in." The second they stepped inside, he regretted it. He could still hear his mom's voice in his head saying, "Never let strangers in the house, especially not at night." But it was too late. He led them to the guest room, shut the door, then bolted upstairs, his mind racing. He grabbed his phone to call his father, hoping maybe this neighbor was real. But that's when the next thing went wrong. No signal, no bars, not even one. He held his phone to the ceiling, moved near the window. Nothing, not even basic service. That's when he knew something is wrong. And if you think the creepy details end there, you are not even close. He kept his sister close. No way was he letting her out of his sight while those two strangers were sitting downstairs. They couldn't get through to their parents. No phone, no signal. Just the sound of the ticking clock and the feeling of something off in the air. Trying to keep calm, Reem finally said, "Well, they said they were tired. Should we bring them some water?" So Imad and his sister headed down to the kitchen. As they walked, he kept straining his ears, trying to hear anything from the guest room. But there was nothing. No movement, no conversation, not even a whisper. And that silence, it was wrong. It wasn't the kind of quiet you get from resting guests. It was the kind that feels intentional. They filled 2 glasses of water, then cautiously made their way back to the room. The strangers were still sitting there, completely still. Imad placed the glasses down in front of them. They didn't even glance at them, didn't move, didn't react, didn't blink. Then, the woman leaned in again, just like before, and whispered something into the man's ear, still too quiet to hear. Then the man looked up, locked eyes with Imad, and asked him something that nearly made his knees give out. "Son, how did you let us into this house?" Imad froze. His brain went into a spiral. Why would anyone ask that? In that moment, the only thing he could picture was him and his sister ending up on tomorrow's news, names listed under the obituary section. He imagined police tape, headlines, and 2 bodies found in a quiet suburban home. He couldn't speak. His throat tightened. He swallowed hard, tried to keep his face neutral, but inside, panic was setting in. He looked at Reem. She was confused, maybe even scared, but she hadn't caught the full weight of the question like he had. And then, it happened again. The woman leaned toward the man, whispered something. The man nodded slowly, then turned to Imad and said, "My wife needs to use the bathroom. Would you mind having your sister show her where it is?" Now Imad's alarm bells were screaming. Why Reem? Why not just ask him? He stood up, already deciding, there's no way I'm letting my little sister walk off alone with this woman. So he answered, trying to stay calm, "That's okay. I'll show her myself." But the man immediately snapped. "No!" he barked. "You're a boy. She's a woman. That's not right. Let the girl take her." Imad stood his ground. "No, I'll just tell you how to get there." He pointed toward the hallway. "Go out the door. Take a left and it's right there. You can't miss it." There was a tense pause. Then the woman slowly rose to her feet. She turned and walked out of the room. Or at least, Imad thought she walked, because what he saw next didn't look like walking at all. It looked like floating. He stared, trying to make sense of it. Her abaya was loose and billowy, so it was hard to tell, but she didn't seem to be putting any weight on her feet. She moved smoothly down the hall like something was pulling her, like she was being dragged, silently just inches above the ground. He blinked. Was it the fabric? Was she gliding somehow? He couldn't tell. All he knew was something about her movement was not human. She was gone for barely a few seconds. Imad blinked, and there she was, already back. The woman in black had supposedly just gone to the bathroom, but there was no way she'd had enough time. Not unless she sprinted in and out without even closing the door. He stared at her, confused. Did she even go? But before he could ask, the woman suddenly spoke, and the words that came out of her mouth weren't words at all. Imad says he knows English. He's heard French, Spanish, even bits of Russian and Mandarin. But this wasn't a language. It was a series of harsh, garbled sounds, low, guttural clicks and tones that didn't sound human, and it sent a chill down his spine. The man must have seen the concern on Imad's face, because he quickly stepped in with a crooked yellow smile and said, "My wife's a foreigner, doesn't speak Arabic." Then, without missing a beat, he added, "She says, could your sister open the door for her? She doesn't know how." That was it. That was the moment Imad realized something was really, really wrong. Who in the modern world doesn't know how to open a door? A bathroom door, no less. You push it or pull it. That's it. But Imad had heard stories, ones that don't belong in textbooks or news reports, and those stories always warned of one thing: Jinn can't open doors. There's even a hadith. He couldn't remember the exact words, but the message was clear. After sunset, lock your doors and windows, because once night falls, dark things roam, and they can't get in unless you let them. So when this thing in front of him pretended not to know how to use a door, something clicked. They weren't human. Still, he didn't want to show fear. So, reluctantly, he agreed to let his sister go with the woman. But he followed, quietly, keeping his distance, watching every step. Then suddenly the man snapped at him. "Where do you think you're going?" Imad turned. "Excuse me?" This was his house, and now this stranger was questioning why he was walking through it. He didn't even respond, just stared at the man coldly, then kept walking until he reached the doorway of the guest room. He stayed there, watching as his little sister followed the woman toward the bathroom, and just as he stood there, trying to calm his nerves, the man behind him asked something that made his blood run cold. "Tell me, son, what scares you more, death or the dark?" Imad slowly turned his head. Their eyes met. They didn't say a word, but in that moment, there was a silent conversation happening, one filled with dread and understanding. And then, everything went black. The power cut out. The entire house was swallowed in darkness. Imad's heart pounded. He couldn't see Reem. He couldn't see the hallway. And the man who'd just asked about death, was somewhere behind him, in the dark, just a few steps away. Panic surged. Imad began yelling, "Reem! Reem! Where are you?" But before she could answer, something else did. A noise, low and sinister, came hissing from the guest room. It sounded like a snake. He turned, trying to locate the source, and that's when he saw it. Someone emerged from the darkness. It was a woman, but not the same one. This one had long tangled hair that nearly touched the ground, and the way she moved, she wasn't walking. She was jumping, like bouncing violently like a broken puppet. She moved like something that didn't understand how a human body should work, a twisted circus act. 1 second she was on the floor, the next she was in midair, leaping, crawling, twisting. It wasn't human. Imad says the second he saw that horrifying creature bouncing toward him, he couldn't move. He was frozen. But then he heard his sister scream. Her voice came from the bathroom. It was panicked, desperate. That's when it hit him. She was trapped. But instead of running to her, his fear took over. He turned and bolted upstairs, sprinting to his room like his life depended on it. Once inside, he slammed the door shut, locked it, and collapsed on the floor in a full-blown panic, sobbing uncontrollably. He had no idea what to do. And somehow, despite all the chaos the family made, was still asleep. Still asleep. But there was one glimmer of hope. Imad's room, from the outside, was positioned just near the bathroom. The house had a weird layout. There was a small garden below, and if he could just climb out of his window, he might be able to reach his sister. So he opened his window, gripped the edge, and began to lower himself out. It worked. From where he hung, he could see the bathroom window, and through it, Reem. She was crying, pounding at the glass. He motioned to her, and thank God she understood. She opened the small window just enough, and Imad reached out, grabbed her hand and pulled her out. They both dropped down into the garden below, still inside the property, but finally out of that cursed house. As they stumbled through the garden, trying to escape, Reem, still sniffling, tugged at his arm and said, "The maid, she's still inside." But Imad shook his head. "We can't go back right now. We'll get help. We'll call the police. They don't even know she's there. She's safe. For now." But Reem, in her childlike innocence, insisted. "We have to go back." He told her the truth. They're trapped in the house. They can't open doors. That's why we're safe right now. If we go back in, we won't be. So they kept moving, trying to get as far away from the house as possible, sticking to the edges of the yard. But suddenly Reem stopped. I can't run anymore," she said, completely out of breath. Imad bent down to carry her on his back. He hoisted her up, but before he could even take a step, every light in the house turned on. At the exact same moment, every single window blew open. It was like the house had come to life. Imad slowly turned back, and standing just a few feet in front of him was the man, still staring. With that same twisted grin, he said, "You never answered me, son. What scares you more, death or the dark?" Imad's heart nearly stopped. Reem clung tighter to his back, her tiny hands bunching up his shirt in fear. He turned to run the other way, but that's when he saw her again. The woman, the one who bounced. She was right behind them, and this time, there was something else. A scream. Reem's cut through the air as she pointed to the roof of the house. Imad looked up and nearly collapsed. The maid. She was hanging by the neck from the roof, dangling, lifeless. It looked like a suicide, but Imad knew better. He looked forward. The man was muttering something in that same horrific, unnatural language. Behind him, the woman was doing the same. They were trapping him and his sister. They weren't going to walk out of this. They were seconds away from dying. And then, a sound echoed through the air. The call to prayer. Fajr. Suddenly, other mosques in the area joined in. The entire neighborhood was filled with the sound of the adhan, and just like that, everything stopped. The man turned to face them one last time, his face twisted in rage. "Next time, you won't escape," he growled. Then they vanished. Gone. In the blink of an eye. No running, no movement. 1 second they were there and the next they weren't. Imad and Reem collapsed, sobbing. But they were alive. They called the police. They called their parents. When authorities came, the maid was declared a suicide. No one believed Imad's story. And Reem? From that day on, she never spoke again. She didn't just fall silent. She lost her voice completely. And to this day, years later, she still hasn't said a single word. Imad tried to tell people what really happened, but nobody listened. And eventually, he stopped talking about it altogether. But if what he saw was real, then whatever came into that house that night didn't just leave. It's waiting. And it only needs one thing to come back. Someone to open the door.